why would that thing sit there 95% of the time, totally unused?
Yeah.
This is a device that could earn you money. Well, that's a big, almost philosophical question.
Yeah.
Right? And it's also inevitable to talk about Elon Musk in that context. A data pipeline that then allows us to train our AI models, because meanwhile most of these things are based on artificial intelligence. But as a result, it becomes more and more of a challenge to actually have affordable entry vehicles.
Ladies and gentlemen, coming at you from the Motor Valley of Europe, I'm talking, of course, about Stuttgart, Germany. This is the Screens Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Sigers. Your co-host today is Screens CEO Dirk Beer. Hi, Dirk.
Hello. Hi.
You know, science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke famously wrote that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. All right. Our guest today is no stranger to technology. I'm not sure about magic, though. Chief Technology Officer of Valeo Comfort and Driving Assistance, Joachim Mathes. Thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Hopefully I didn't butcher your name too much.
No, that was perfect.
So, Joachim, please tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Well, for those who cannot see me, I'm an old guy. You know, I've spent literally decades in the automotive industry. Actually, 37 years by now, and therefore I've seen a change.
Yeah,
right.
I've seen a couple things,
and I think we're in the middle of another period of change. I mean, it's not the first time, but it's probably running as deep as it gets. Into some of the value chains, into some of the way that money is being generated, where we see that the industry somewhat has to reinvent itself.
Yeah,
and I'm sure we have plenty of interesting things to talk about.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, let's get right into it. Like, let's talk a little bit about technology with when it comes to vehicles. Like, let's talk about the software-defined vehicle a little bit. Like, are modern cars becoming more and more similar to smartphones or like mobile computers even?
Well, that term starts to get a bit overused, right?
Yeah.
Software defined, because it's still, I would say, a physical device that we're talking about. Probably something like 2 tons of metal that are moving people or goods around. But what's new is that indeed, software is taking a means of differentiation, is becoming a means of generating revenue. And in the past, like I said, I'm the old guy here at the table. Everything was focused on start of production, SOP. That was the magic word everywhere in every meeting. How do we make SOP? How do we deliver on time? But it was a kind of one-off event, right? You make your product ready for start of production, and then you start shipping, and you stop all of your engineering activities. Or for the car manufacturers or the vehicle manufacturers, it was the point of sale. So you find a customer, you sell him the vehicle, and you're done. Now, what is different about software is that these cars are all now connected devices. So post SOP or post point of sale, there will still be some effort required. The protection against cyber threats or whatever. As a result, we have to keep working on them, taking care of them, which means spending effort, resources, and money. And where's that money going to come from? So I think that's one of the interesting questions that will probably be coming back time and again during this discussion. That's what I meant in terms of value chains, business models. There's some disruption going on here. Because we need money to take care of these vehicles for, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. The average vehicle population age is something like 10 years globally, plus minus. So it means some of them are around for 20 years. And at least in terms of safety, there can be no compromise. So there's efforts needed in terms of software. It's much nicer to talk about features and over-the-air updates, which is all nice too, right?
All the fun stuff, yeah.
But that is the means of generating revenue that is necessary to finance these other efforts.
Seeing many traditional OEMs like going into software development anyway, like Mercedes, and Amazon becoming more involved in vehicle manufacturing via like its large stake in Rivian. Should we expect the same from other large software houses like Apple, Microsoft, Google, stuff like that, getting into vehicles? It's a loaded question.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of mixing two different things there with Mercedes and Amazon. If I may just kind of keep them apart. I think both are very interesting case studies, right? Mercedes and their partnership with NVIDIA, which is quite public, right, is showing, I think, a trend for these software-defined vehicles, which is also centered around hardware, right? I mean, NVIDIA primarily is a silicon manufacturer, a chip manufacturer, but it means that as far as we can say, every Mercedes from a certain point on will feature one of these NVIDIA SoCs, which is I would say not cheap, right? I mean, you can look up what they cost, but as a result, it becomes more and more of a challenge to actually have affordable entry vehicles.
Yeah.
Okay, so all of that software-defined vehicle efforts also lead to a larger degree of standardization in terms of architecture, in terms of hardware, as the example mentioned. And therefore, it's probably a reason as well why Mercedes, let's say the small, take Smart as an example, is now more or less spun off, or if you want, sold to Geely. Because I think these high-end computing platforms that you need for an S-Class or a very premium vehicle don't scale to the like of a Smart. Okay, so that's one thing that, again, probably we will come back on later, that question of scalability and the link between hardware and software, even though they become more and more abstracted, separated also from a purchasing point of view, but there is a link.
Okay.
Now the other story about the tech giants, and I will not enter into the speculations about an Apple car or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But look, why would a company like Google get their hands dirty with metal bashing and spare parts supply in all parts of the world for decades? I think there's no need. There's enough spare capacity there. But they're probably like Amazon, and again, let's not forget about China in that context, right? But there is an opportunity there to automate processes. And Amazon, I would say, is to a large degree, I mean, there are many things, right? But to a large degree, it's also a logistics company.
Yeah.
And a lot of productivity has been gained in the automation of logistics processes. Why not take it to the next step in terms of distribution? That's probably one of the things that is the motivation behind their investment in Rivian.
Interesting.
Yeah, you brought up something interesting when you said, NVIDIA, and the value chain, the automotive value chain, and the changes that you're probably seeing right now. I mean, chip makers like NVIDIA entering, what do you actually, let me just ask you, what do you think about chip makers like NVIDIA, entering hardware support and things like that, or tech companies like Google maybe entering software?
Well, let me start a bit differently. I'm sorry. Let me start a bit differently. The old model in the automotive industry was that there was the vehicle manufacturer, the OEM, and then there were a bunch of people considered tier 1 suppliers, or tier 2, tier 3, a very hierarchically organized pyramid, right? And then we started seeing people claiming they would be a tier 0.5 or whatever that means, right? But like I said, a very hierarchical organization. And in that sense, where do you put a company like NVIDIA? Well, normally you would say, hey, tier 2, tier 3, whatever. But now they're working directly with the OEMs. Yeah. So that's actually behind what I said in my introduction about changes in the value chain, which are actually running very deep. And I'm not defending the old model. I think it's just outdated. Now, the question in the old world, it was very clear who was the boss. Right? If the OEM said something, the tier 1s had to follow very closely what they were asked. Now, in this relationship between an OEM and a chip maker, and I mean, look at their whatever capitalization or whatever. This clear hierarchy doesn't exist anymore. And so I will just not continue speculating at what is the tail wagging the dog or whatever. But you got to see some interesting things there.
Yeah, I mean, is there any real risk of tier one suppliers becoming obsolete, kind of, or I mean,
working for tier one. What should I say? What should I say? I mean, I'm sure that we have an added value in this process.
Okay.
No doubt. Okay. Now, the way we are engaging with our customers is changing. There are, let me say, a number of vectors or of dimensions in which we have been serving our customers. And I would say in all of them, we are now in a new competitive situation. Sometimes actually with our customers, as they are insourcing activities. And I mean, what do you do if your customer doesn't want to buy what you offer? Well, you just don't offer it anymore, right? But now, not all customers are identical. Not everybody is Mercedes, has the same deep pockets. Not everybody is whatever BMW, to say another name. And then there are the premium OEMs that generally have rather deep pockets and a rather deep engineering resources and competences. But not everybody does. So even in this new world, we see that there are both, let's say, archetypes of OEMs, or let's say ways of running projects, which are even more like turnkey. Where they come to us and say, you guys manage. So it's probably actually more extreme than what has been. While at the same time, like I said, in all of the different vectors or dimensions, we will be competing either against the OEMs or against very different players. Be they the chip makers you just mentioned, be they the tech giants that you already mentioned, and be they say contract manufacturers. I know well-known, let me say, as an example, Flex, or the Foxconns and I don't know, Quanta, just to say a few names, right?
Right.
Which might even come from the consumer electronics world, building laptops, building smartphones. But now with that trend that you describe, they have a certain legitimacy as well to claim entering that ecosystem. And I mean, we have to face it. We are competing against them, and we will be competing against them successfully, I'm sure.
What do you think is the, since we're discussing about archetypes of OEMs, so to say, what do you think is a reason that some OEMs rely on Google operating systems and others try to develop their own systems, like Mercedes, for example, does, or Volkswagen with CARIAD? Or what would you prefer if you were, let's say, CEO of an OEM? What would your strategy be?
Oh, that's the slippery slope.
It's a tough one, I know.
I can understand both sides or both approaches. And you again, we keep talking about Mercedes, maybe just because they're next door.
Probably.
And also in that case, the example of MBUX, I believe is a very interesting one. And I would say it's a quite successful one. When I sit in a car, when I see the reviews, generally people appreciate what MBUX does for them.
Yeah.
And we can also assume the rationale behind is, let's say, solid. To say, well, Mercedes, as the car manufacturer, wants to control the user experience, wants to have, let's say, their DNA or their brand values, let's say, directly visible and part of the experience. And for sure as well, the privacy or the access to data matters a lot to them. Yeah. And as a result, they have invested heavily. They've published some numbers. I'm sure you see them, but we talk about billions of euros, right? And with those billions of euros, they managed to create an architecture. I think nice video, a nice picture that Ola Kalenius has been presenting, like a building where you can rent out apartments, etc. So they built this building, and they're putting the likes of Google into one of these apartments as a tenant. Yeah. Once again, they have deep pockets.
Yeah.
But these billions, and you know how many cars they make. I mean, that's a significant per vehicle amount that you have to amortize. And then if you're on the other scale in terms of market positioning, you just have no monetization opportunity for that. So you might want to do the same thing, but you can probably not afford, not sustain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll not mention any names because people might feel offended, but I think you can come up with examples where you say, well, they are not Mercedes; they are at the other end of the scale.
Yeah.
And then logically, it's also very rational to look for a giant like Google that can draw not only on the resources but the data, the number of devices that they already have, and all of the ecosystem that they've built, and therefore avoiding to spend these billions because they've already been spent. Yeah. It's already there. Yeah. And I think that's kind of a very powerful incentive to say, hey, then let's just join forces. Let's just use that and avoid that. You could say it's a waste recreating all this. But I think underneath the question of data and control over the user experience of your customers is a big argument. Yeah. And that's probably where a lot of people now who are sitting in the middle are scratching their heads right now and saying, well, should I go this way or continue that way or change? And maybe one more thing on that. I believe it's going to evolve over time. And Mercedes were, to stay with Mercedes as an example, right? Yeah. I mean, we're among the first ones with their MBUX. Yeah. And they were very clear in what they wanted to accomplish and how this house that Ola referred to is going to look like, and so on. So they built it. But a house is also something pretty solid and rigid, right? Yeah. And at the time they chose, this was kind of entrenching themselves. While on the other hand, the likes of Google were entrenching themselves and say, yeah, it's either my way or the highway. So take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And what is quite interesting, again, I assume also everybody who's listening is somehow following what's being announced and what has been communicated around the new E-Class. It seems like people are now carefully, moving towards each other. Yeah. Now, from their trenches, they're getting up, looking out, and say, "Hey, maybe these other guys are not our enemies. Yeah. Maybe actually there can be a form of collaboration.
Yeah. We can work together."
Yeah. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes down to this, when we're talking about the operating systems, I think you kind of briefly mentioned it, but like you talk about like data concerns, things like that. Well, let's talk about cybersecurity when it comes to this kind of integrated thing we've got going on. Like, I mean, do you think is it safe to assume that cybersecurity is going to become one of the most critical aspects or the most critical aspect of like a future connected vehicle?
In answering that, I would first of all want to avoid playing down the importance of cybersecurity, right? I mean, that's it's clear. I mean, but on the other hand, even looking at, I would say, simple mechanical systems like brakes, of course, you rely on your brakes to always work under any condition.
I hope so. Definitely.
And that's what the automotive industry has been doing successfully for 125 years, and they've come up with different brake systems, but in the end, whatever generation of brake systems you had, it was always tested and validated to be safe, and basically it's a mastered technology. On the other hand, you don't buy a car because these brakes are more safe.
You've got to check out these brakes on this car.
I mean, you might have some opinions about the way the pedal feels or whatever. Yeah. But you don't even question that they don't work. Right. And therefore, I think in terms of cybersecurity, it's like that. I mean, it's so important. It's as important as the brake on your car. So you won't buy a car that won't have the cybersecurity. But on the other hand, also now regulators are taking care of this. It will be very difficult to sell a car that is not cyber secure. Okay, so it becomes kind of non-differentiating. Yeah. Now the other point, of course, is that it's an effort, and once again that brings a cost with it that nobody really wants to pay. Yeah. Right? Because non-differentiating, say, well, of course, I don't buy a car if the brakes don't work. I don't buy a car if it's going to be hacked by somebody. And the difference now between the two is that you engineer your brake system to perfection, and then you maintain it with a bit of servicing here or there, but the maintenance effort is kind of tiny.
Yeah.
In terms of cybersecurity, the maintenance effort is much higher.
Yeah.
So that's coming back to my intro again to say,
exactly.
Of course, this was the state of the art when we launched the vehicle, and we did everything possible to make it safe. But it's always going to be a race between the bad guys and the good guys, or the manufacturers, where then whenever the other side makes a move, there will be a response, and it won't stop, and the effort will just continue throughout the life of the vehicle.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting question how to get the customer to pay for this, because in total the vehicle cannot get more expensive, even though if it was over time, buy a vehicle to the price as it is now, but then pay whatever amount every year for the cybersecurity. Nobody would do that. So what do you think where this is going to end up? I mean, of course, maybe it's going to be more efficient in future to handle cybersecurity, but I guess not. So the cost will still be there. So is this solution to not own a vehicle anymore, but to rather rent it to, my car is standing in the garage like 95% of the time. So it would make sense not to own it all that time. So so I could maybe afford a nicer one for a shorter time and then pay for things like cybersecurity as I use it. So is that maybe a solution instead of trying to sell additional things to me in a car that I have to additionally pay for, which I might not like as a client, as a user, since it would make the car more expensive over time, or it feels. I mean, we had this discussion with Mercedes where you have to pay extra for extra.
Like the subscriptions that you have
subscription
to do
for a stronger engine, so to say. That actually is kind of frustrating for the user in a way, but or maybe not. But what do you think could be the solution how to finance that?
Well, thanks for bringing it up, because I was about to say the same thing, and now we can just keep it short, and I say yes.
Yes.
Now to put a bit more meat on the bone, that also is going to lead us to the question of autonomy or automation,
right.
Which is pretty much flowing in a similar direction, and we'll have to explore again business models. But in that case, I think what you said a moment ago is the key point. It's about end user expectation.
Yeah.
And one name has not come up, so let me put it on the table. That's Tesla.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it needs to come up at some point in time in
this
discussion, right?
Yes, for sure.
But also for the audience, I know everybody has a kind of image of Tesla, and usually it's more like, hey, these are the people doing the cool electric vehicles, right? And everybody's more onto it about powertrain and the superchargers and whatever. But what they've, let's say, fundamentally changed is exactly what you were saying, that these vehicles. Or come back to what I was saying, point of sale, for the average vehicle sales guy, it was the point of, hey, here's the key, congratulations, and then the customer would drive off and potentially never be seen again.
Yeah, we're done. We'll come back for oil changes on occasion or something like that. But
maybe, and then maybe you go another place for the oil change because it's cheaper, right?
Right.
Yeah. Because then you had paid for the car,
Yep.
with your car, and you choose what to do with it and to come back or not. Now, with Tesla, it might feel the same way. Actually, let's discuss about that too, because they've also changed the dealership network and everything that goes with it, right? But fundamentally, the car still belongs somehow to Tesla.
Somehow,
right? You pay them, but this car is always part of the Tesla fleet. Always communicating back to headquarters or the cloud backend, whatever, and it's also fundamentally different because in the traditional model, again, let's take the neighbors here. Mercedes. What an exercise to configure your Mercedes. Right? You can take days going through options and click this. And well, if you this, why don't you also take that? Or actually, if you take this, you also have to take that. Right?
Yeah, nice.
And then I was in their factory 56 a couple of weeks ago, where they're building the S classes, EQS, and so on. And I was told that even if every person on Earth was able to afford an S-Class, nobody would have to drive the same S-Class. As the
I hear
one.
that one. Yeah. That's
Really?
crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
There would no two S-Classes look alike.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Right? I mean, everybody. Probably if we compare phones, we might have the same phone, but yours looks different, right?
Yeah.
You have a different screen
I've got
there. You have
really
different apps there.
Dumb apps on mine that I just download once
But
and should delete.
physically, it's probably almost the same.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that is one of the key aspects of when we talk software-defined vehicles. That then the hardware needs to become, as I was saying earlier, much more standardized. And building 8 billion versions of hardware is insane. And once again, it used to make sense because it was the moment you passed the key, you never saw the car again.
Yeah.
And the happier the customer was with his bespoke, very specifically configured vehicle, pride, the more likely he was going to come back for more.
Yeah.
But these days, it means that if I take this crazy example, that there might be 8 billion vehicle variants over which you have to ensure your cybersecurity.
Yeah.
For which you have to validate every software update in terms of function, that it also works if this thing is fitted or not fitted. Because it's not just that you have a different color or a bit of alloy wheels here or there. On the electronic side, it means that these boxes are put or not put. The wire is drawn through the vehicle or not drawn, and therefore any kind of software update depends on the hardware that's physically there or not. In the case of Tesla, we know it's there.
Yeah.
And Tesla paid for it, you could say. And then if I choose to enable whatever, full self-driving or whatever, that is software. But Tesla paid for the hardware. And I think that's then as well, leading to this question of who owns what. What am I paying for? Am I paying for the wires and the boxes or not? Or am I paying for the package as a whole? And I believe we will be heading there out of the necessity of maintaining over a lifetime this fleet of many, many vehicles. And Tesla is setting the example, and many people are following, bringing us back to this affordability question.
Yeah.
But then if you fit it, you first have to pay for it. And in the traditional models, the OEM would make you, the customer, pay and then fit. And therefore, if you fit it from the beginning, it makes the vehicle more expensive. It might not be affordable anymore to own it. And we'll come back to the 95% of the time, etc. story, later point. But then maybe a way is to rent it. So that's I think one of the streams we're going to see. But it means Tesla owners have already kind of subscribed to that concept. They follow that logic and say, fine. But Mercedes or BMW or VW or if you want Stellantis something, everybody else has been conditioned to this logic. It is my vehicle. I paid for it.
Absolutely.
And breaking that is going to take time.
Yeah, that's not going to be easy. Especially since, I think it's going to become like 5 different trains of thought because of everything you just said. It was all over. But yeah, I think we always get into a discussion about, the vehicles now are less, there's still vehicles, don't get me wrong, but they've transitioned to like pieces of technology, rather than just your traditional, hey, we just bought a car, this gets me from A to B, or, maybe even you're a car guy. I think like Dirk, you're more of a car guy.
Especially the car owning guy. So we're all old enough to want to own a car, but the younger generation maybe doesn't want this anymore. So this is what I see from our colleagues. So we're both kind of around 40. Like I'm a bit beyond, and you're closer.
But I probably have I don't know, 500 CDs, you know?
Yeah, also similar thing. Me too.
Who's buying CDs?
Do you have the little stack thing or like the CD case holder and all that? Or?
I have a wall. You know?
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I mean, it'll come back around. Like right now, I think everybody has the LPs, the albums. You know, I mean, those are cool again, right? So
yeah, but it's a kind of differentiation. It's a luxury if you want, because you don't need. I mean,
no.
You have your whatever subscription. I do too, and most of the time I just stream the stuff. You know.
Yeah. But it has a similar effect actually on vehicles. If I think it's really the same thing. If I could kind of stream a vehicle, you know, like have whatever vehicle whenever I need it, there's not that much identification anymore. And the same goes for music. I always feel like I have to talk to people that are beyond 40 to talk to somebody who has a relation to music, because it's, you know, when you bought an album for 10, 15 D-Mark, you know, or even more, you listen to the whole thing, you know, like to every 10 songs on it, even though you didn't like 7 of them, but then you started, you know, getting into the songs and identifying with the band. And now since everything is so exchangeable and streamable, and there's no connection between the listener and the music unless you maybe play an instrument. The same might go for cars. I remember we've been having Stefano Carminati, who used to be a design chief for Chang'an, a few weeks in the show, and we were discussing a similar thing, that the magic of vehicles gets lost when the vehicle becomes self-driving. It's like, because nobody cares about how a train or an airplane looks. So
yeah.
It's a bit different, but I liked his counter argument. He said, if this is the case and you rent vehicles as you like them, you could go to more extremes. So you can have a Lamborghini on the weekend, and for another 2 days you have a station wagon or whatever. I like that one. So is maybe a good. I would prefer this type of future compared to all cars looking like a piece of soap. I mean, they're so similar, especially the Chinese ones.
It's not just the styling. And again, automation will play a role in that too.
Yeah.
But just think of how we've all been. I don't know. We probably had it too good, you know.
In a way.
You had the choice of do you take petrol or diesel? What kind of, you know, what number of cylinders do you want? But I mean, more or less, it was pretty flexible. It was an optimization of let's say, a fuel bill here or whatever, but you could go wherever you wanted, whenever you wanted. You would always find fuel. You would always have enough power. You would always have, etc. So the car was really, any car was a multi-purpose device. Some would be more comfortable than others for certain use profiles, you know, maybe too big for the city here, or maybe too noisy for a long stretch of motorway there. But in principle, everything was doable. Now, when you think of battery electric vehicles, or you choose hydrogen or whatever you pick, I mean, all of these fantastic new technologies, they're all unfortunately somehow compromised. Okay, so you know, people will, or at the moment, are looking for battery electric vehicles with a range of 500, 600 kilometers.
Yeah.
Is it doable? Of course it is doable. But then you carry 100 plus kilowatt hour battery, which weighs as much as a car used to do in the past, right? And it costs as much as a car used to do. I mean, the battery is a car.
Battery itself,
And then you drive whatever 20 kilometers a day. Yeah, but at some point in time, I might want to go 600.
Yeah.
What a nonsense! It comes from this ownership model. Say you make this big acquisition, probably largest in life, or one of the largest in life. You don't want to compromise. You want to have the car that does it all, and you could get it, but you can't anymore. We have to make a choice, and then you choose a vehicle for the city, maybe a small electric with a small battery, and then you choose whatever. Sedan or something for long distance motorway driving. And by the way, you have to do some towing, so you buy an SUV.
Yeah.
And then where's the garage space, and where's the money going to come from? And no, it doesn't work.
It always
right?
doesn't work
anymore. So, but to cater for all segments is going to get increasingly difficult.
Oh yeah.
And therefore, I think again, this rental model or subscription model as such has a nice charm if you can let go of the ownership.
Yeah, yeah.
I would
That
subscribe
would
to
be
that.
very interesting, actually, to pay an annual amount and to have. It used to be with like with renting DVDs, the same thing. That you could go, you could subscribe to the DVD shop and have like 2 at home all time, and you could exchange them as often if you like, but never more than 2.
That's how Netflix started, basically. Yeah, just getting the DVDs in the mail.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and if the same would go for vehicles, that would be very interesting. Yeah.
And then there's the point of what you said. Let me start differently. In terms of automation, everybody has been using the term autonomous. For I don't know, again, years and years, without being too clear what it is. And probably we have to come back to Tesla and autopilot and whatever. But then there's a misconception as well in people's minds, in most people's minds, as to what it means and what it will mean for them. I should have checked my facts, but I think it was about 5 years ago that there was a survey done in the UK where roughly 22% of respondents believed they could, if they had enough money, they could go into a dealership and buy a car that will take them to the office while they read the newspaper.
5 years ago. Okay.
Well, so maybe they were much more advanced in their thinking.
Overshot that.
But I know what we're working on in terms of our ADAS and AD systems, and that's probably a while to go.
Yeah.
Not the fact that the car drives itself, but the fact that you are somehow buried in your newspaper. Which means it's it would be an L3 or even L4 in terms of SAE levels. But then same thing. If you ask people now, are you ready to compromise? Whatever Mercedes is offering as a drive pilot is quite restrained still. In terms of use cases. If you give people a choice, do you want that or do you want something that always, everywhere, and so on? Yeah, of course, you want something that works always and everywhere under all conditions and so on, which is SAE level 5.
Yeah.
But if you would have that machine, if it would exist, why would that thing sit there 95% of the time, totally unused?
Yeah.
This is a device that could earn you money. I mean, that's the Elon Musk story, right? Where he was kind of promising that your Tesla will actually earn money for you because it's driving, it's doing stuff
like an Uber.
So therefore, if that time will come, and vehicles would have that capability, what company would invest into a device of that capability and then have it idle 95% of the time? If you have built the studio, I'm sure you make sure it's used every day or several times, ideally 24/7, right? And an investment that just sits idle 95% of the time makes no sense. And strictly speaking, even for most people's usage of the car today, it's not a good investment.
Absolutely not. True.
It's a luxury.
Yeah. You bring a good point up with the autonomous vehicles, though, because that's something we like to talk about on the show all the time, typically. Especially when you talk about what kind of security features you would need in something that was fully autonomous that you'd actually get into, like an airplane. If you want to sit in a car, read the newspaper, like that would be, I would have to trust that thing a lot. Because right now I don't even like being a passenger in a vehicle. Like I have no control over the vehicle. So how do you get people to actually, be willing to sit and trust that this vehicle is going to take them where they are going to go? That's a whole other discussion. I don't know if you want to talk about that or not.
Yeah, with pleasure.
Yeah, please.
Valeo is one globally of the leading companies when it comes to ADAS, driving assistance and automated driving. I feel quite confident with these topics, and maybe unlike some other people that say, hey, it's all late and it's a big disappointment. We've been promised these things and they're not arriving and so on.
Yeah.
I say, hey, it's good. It's good, right? Because some people were probably very aggressive Again, not mentioning any names, but then they either got their fingers burned. There were some cases quite tragic, right? And therefore, I think what we're seeing is a healthy mechanism where then, let's say, as an industry, collectively now, we're taking a much more incremental, if you want, cautious approach. And I had an interesting discussion, actually, it's just last week in Israel, where the moderator said, yeah, but look, it's not exciting, with this automated driving. It's really exciting. I said, no, it should be a non-event. It should be not exciting at all.
Yeah.
I think you said it earlier. I step on a train.
Yeah.
I don't really care, what
Exactly.
motors it has, or what sensors it has, or whatever, because it's working.
Yeah.
It's working, and that's, I believe, where we need to go, and we will go with these driverless vehicles as well. It will be a non-event. You just board it, and it takes you where you want, and you get off, and you don't even have a look at who made it or what devices are on it, because it's just getting you from A to B.
Yeah, that's a great way to put
taxi,
it. Yeah, hang gliding should be exciting. Like travel should not be.
and then on the weekend, you rent your Lamborghini or whatever it is, right? And you have some excitement.
Yeah.
But if you don't get to A to B, why exciting? No. Excitement is not the right thing,
Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely right.
It's like your brake pedal is all of a sudden falling to the floor. Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, that's exciting.
You don't want that.
Not good. Not good.
Yes.
Maybe just because I think I didn't really answer your question in terms of what's going to be there, right?
Yeah.
Maybe just a minute on that. To make it non-exciting means to make efforts in designing, and probably as well to spend some money in terms of the hardware. So like in a lot of safety critical applications, it means redundancy.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean think of aircraft. I mean that's probably again something you don't want to go wrong.
No,
but it means many things don't have to be reinvented, even from a certification point of view, etc. It exists. We know what to do. As engineers, we know what to do. But then think of the cost of an aircraft.
True.
Okay, so these autonomous vehicles won't be cheap, and as well, an aircraft. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but you don't buy them like for a year, and then you buy another one. You buy them. You have an investment for, in many cases, decades. And these things are kept safe, are kept up to date, even by replacing mechanical parts or key parts of the electronic system, probably as well, to keep them safe. And again, we keep touching on the same points during this discussion, but I'm convinced that's going to happen, and that needs to happen for cars as well.
Yeah.
So we will put all of the radars, cameras, lidars, other sensors like ultrasonics, thermal, etc., on these vehicles, and we do, and they exist, and they drive. Not many of them, but they do, and they are basically an extension of the transport system.
Yeah.
They are, in other words, they are commercial vehicles. So a lot of the things that apply, again, they do exist, but you know them from trucks or whatever. Commercial vehicles that have to work 24/7, and once again they have to work for a decade or two, or even 3. And that's very different from what we all want to have in our vehicle. You want to have a new vehicle every couple of years, have a different experience, and that's why the usage model again needs to change as well in that sense.
Yeah,
very interesting. Yeah, but that's the point. It doesn't work if people keep owning or buying the vehicles to own them. I mean, as you said, an airplane is extremely expensive, but it's up in the air 95% of the time. So it's the other way around as with a vehicle. I remember listening to a speech from the CEO of Ryanair, and he said he's getting informed if an airplane is 10 or 20 minutes late, because then it's not up in the air and they're losing money. So they had a really tough policy. But that makes sense. I mean, exactly, this is how it has to be. So, but one question regarding Tesla occurred to me. Since they're so outstanding and everybody's talking about them, is one thing we realized as we are benchmarking a lot of infotainment systems, it always feels as if they were well, not the only ones, but as if they would really take care of what the client expects and likes, and rather not take that much into account what their competitors does. And it feels like that the younger the OEM is, the more they dare to take care about the end user and not to really say, okay, our competitor is doing something. We know the end user doesn't use it, but we have to implement it because our competitor is doing it. So it really appears like that especially Tesla in the Western Hemisphere is daring to focus on the end user rather than kind of copy pasting what the competitors do. I mean, that's how we had it in the old days. You know, you could say if you were a Mercedes, you could say let's do like BMW plus one, and then we're on the safe side. Mm-hmm. So, and if you transfer this to, let's say, interior ambient lighting colors, it doesn't work anymore. So they have 38, we need to have 40, then we're safe. So, and Tesla leaves out a lot of functions. I mean, you can't write an SMS while driving in a Model 3, at least last time I saw one, because nobody does this, you know. So why implement it? I mean, so is that... Do you have the same impression that the younger the OEM is, they dare not taking the competitors into account that much? And is this an advantage?
Well, that's a big, almost philosophical question.
Yeah,
right? And it's also probably inevitable to talk about Elon Musk in that context, as a person, as a, if you want, leader. So maybe start with that. I mean, that makes Tesla unusual, doesn't it? I mean, compared to other CEOs, this guy is really, really...
A little different.
Different. And some aspects of it are probably good, others less so, right? Mm-hmm. But therefore, does it have to do with the fact that Tesla is like a young company or not? It's probably more the fact that they are kind of autocratic.
They're doing things.
Okay, while let's say the traditional OEMs are huge organizations which are very maybe democratic. You know, I mean, they're all sorts of gremiums and decision-making bodies.
Yeah.
Where in Tesla, it feels like everything goes straight to the top, and then if Elon likes it, it gets done. If Elon doesn't like it, don't care. Okay, so Elon is probably the user that is taking into account.
That's probably the case, and that makes them. Maybe that's why they can act faster than these, as you said, decision-making bodies. That's actually a very good description. And
that's if I made the two more thoughts on that. First, in let me say in terms of geography, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Tesla, being Tesla, I think we are seeing quite a lot of Tesla clones. Companies that are emulating the Tesla model, but they don't have an Elon Musk. In particular, well, okay, again. Let's say in general in China there are some of them which are very successful.
Yes.
Yeah. And they are still faster than what we know from the traditional OEMs, even without an Elon Musk type of person, right? So there might be something in what you're saying, which is then linked to the second point, which is linked then to what I was commenting on earlier, that the traditional model has been much more incremental, much more trying to make the end consumer happy. So that's the point where I disagree. It's not that they don't care. Maybe they care too much, and as a result, they're trying to make everybody happy. Where in the case of Tesla, you just have to make Elon happy. Making everybody happy is almost impossible. And so that's really collectively we're putting in place all sorts of customer clinics here and there, and you have a lot of ambiguity because one person likes it, the other one doesn't. So what do? You try to make everybody happy. You have lots and lots of features, lots and lots of possibilities, and of course you do benchmarking. And everybody's benchmarking everybody, and I know it's an important part of your activities as well. But I think you will agree with me. Benchmarking is like looking in the rearview mirror.
Yeah,
Because
that's
you see what the other guy has decided
3 years ago.
3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So
That's
I
actually
think
why I'm mentioning
that's-
Tesla, because
Yeah.
Tesla is one of the rare examples of OEMs that we do not get as a client. I mean, I would say outside China, we basically have everybody, but Tesla just doesn't care about the competition. So obviously,
And I think mentioning China, you see, that's where I think it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
That also there, sure, people are doing benchmarking, but my impression is that it's a much more risk-taking culture.
Yeah.
and decisions are very fast.
Yeah, and also taking into account some of the things we mentioned already, like how has a Mercedes decided on a partnership like NVIDIA? I'm sure it was not, let's say, a spontaneous decision by like Kalenius to say, hey, I really like Jensen, and let's do this.
There was this one Tuesday.
I'm sure they've carefully analyzed, what alternatives there were, and made plans of what number of vehicles in what configurations will be required in the market, and then they decided. My impression is that in China, they're much more, Darwinian in their approach. They see what will work in the market, we'll make it. What if it doesn't work, we'll stop it again. Fail fast. Or exactly. I think we have a little bit of that conflict in our culture as well. That again, the traditional automotive culture was you cannot fail. You have to make SOP on time, on cost, everything. So I always say it's like, you have a shooter with a high precision rifle, and then I mean the rifle is very expensive, and then you take aim and you take into account the humidity and the wind.
Yes.
I don't know what magic
variables,
because the missing is not an option. While this other thing is more like we have this cut-off shotgun. And you hear some noise in the bushes, and you just pull and
into the right direction,
and something will hit. Right? And then you look what you have. But it's so radically different. And we also, I mean, collectively we try to be both. And that's really hard. And if you're Tesla, you can afford to be one. If you are, to use another name, if you are VW, I mean VW Group. And you have Audi competing against the Mercedes of this world, etc. And then you have, let's say, Skoda or whoever. How can you be everything to everyone?
It's impossible.
It's tough.
But it's really a very traditional, or there's big or cultural differences. This is really what we also experienced when we were entering the market with our software platform. That we found out that the ultimate belief in the Western Hemisphere is kind of quality and being 100% right. So we did like a 100% copy, like digital twin of a vehicle in our platform. And whenever we asked clients to say, should we bring up more vehicles to the platform, but not going into detail that much, they were all like, okay, more vehicles would be good, but we need like the 100% copy. And in China, it's the exact opposite. So their basic belief is not depth and everything 100% right, but speed. So they would go for like triple amount of vehicles with a tenth of depth, but at the day they come out. So this is it's just, and it goes the same for all the OEMs in China. So it's kind of a cultural belief of how to do business. Like as you said, fail fast. This is exactly what they aim for, and it seems to work in a way.
Seems to work really well.
And when did Mr. Pareto issue his 80-20 rule? It's like 100 years ago, right? I mean, a long time ago at least. But it still works. And therefore, when you go above 80%, your efforts increase exponentially. And if your claim is the best or nothing, I mean, how can you be satisfied with 99, right? But as a result, the efforts and the cost and the time to get there are growing a lot. If on the other hand you say, hey, I'm fine with 80 or whatever, 90, you can be much faster. You do a loop, you learn, you iterate, and arguably you might arrive at the 99% faster than the other guy who. Okay, and also from again, let's say traditional automotive point of view, and coming back to my introduction, we've not been able to make that compromise or that concession. Like the best or nothing, like 100%. You deliver SOP, there is no question, whatever it costs, and so on. And coming from a more, if I say, mechanical point of view, because I mean, still a car is made out of a lot of metal.
Still a car,
right? And you have to build, I don't know, presses and tools that cost you millions and millions, and so on. So failure is not an option.
Right.
But then there are many parts, and to your comment about SDV, software-defined vehicle, software doesn't take these investments. Software can go much faster.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see a kind of split. The way to reconcile the conflicts that I just mentioned is probably that one, to say on the more physical, if you want, mechanical metal side, the old paradigm is still okay.
Yeah.
Right. But that's also what this industry is really good at doing. And then we have to accept that there are two different processes, there are two different decision-making ways. They're probably even from a business model point of view, different value chains and different players you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But the car is going to be made out of both. It's not a software-defined vehicle where the hardware is not important or the mechanical, etc. stuff is not relevant. It's remaining relevant, but you have to also be good on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy because the future's more of a, I mean, would you think anyway, that the future's more segmented demographics? Like the old car guys, the new young tech people, or what people want from a car is always going to be different. So the industry is going to have to start going into more small, predefined niches, kind of.
Not necessarily. My point was more that we these days we have a tendency to say, "Hey, software is cool, it's good.
Yep.
Hardware is kind of old economy, bound to die, whatever." But in the automotive industry, we need to stand on both legs.
Yeah.
So if you're only on hardware, not on software, you have a problem. If you're only on software, not on hardware, it might not be a recipe for success either.
Yeah.
But I think that's not debate anymore. But the debate is now as to how we develop the product, how we market the product, and in the end, it might well be possible to cater for a lot of different needs or segments if you leverage the two wisely. But these days, taking Tesla again, for the moment they have the S, the E, the X, and the Y, the S, the 3, and the X, and the Y.
The sexy.
Exactly. Caught me there. But anyway, it's 4. Okay, add the Cybertruck if you wish, or the Roadster when it finally comes, making it 6. Now look at the neighbors here, or the ones in Munich, or wherever. How many models do they have? I mean, I start to lose count.
Yeah. True.
And they all have to be tooled up for and whatever, to say, make that even more, and then make 8 billion variants of each. That's what I call insane.
Yeah.
Right. So address the right segments and leave maybe some open.
Yeah.
Is probably much smarter in terms of managing your financials.
Yeah.
And then differentiate on the software side, differentiate on ownership models that then you can rent this Lamborghini that you always wanted to have for a weekend, but then don't have it sitting in the garage for another 3 months, whatever.
Just for the sake of the neighbor.
That's the way of dealing with these constraints.
I think I've got so many more questions. You're right. You're going to have to come back. We're going to have to have more of a discussion because there's a ton of these that I want to get through. But before we leave, I definitely got to ask, what does the automotive future look like? How does the automotive future look like from Valeo's POV in, say, 10 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually performing a systematic exercise once a year. Where we build what we call a strategic product plan, taking into account everything, the evolution in the market. We see the moves of our customers and competitors, geopolitical aspects, China versus rest of the world, and I'm just working on the presentation for our CEO. Therefore,
if I would,
if I would answer to you, I would have to shoot you afterwards.
Let's not do that.
Everybody in the room.
Or like Men in Black, just. but to not completely escape the answer, I think we have mentioned most of the points already. Right?
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a change in ownership models. In particular, when it comes to let's say the automation of the vehicles, there's something there for the privately operated vehicles. Take Tesla as an example, right? To say, well, there's an autopilot.
Yeah.
A lot of debates about the name, right? But it's a level 2 system, and many people actually use it and are happy with it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of debate about the deficiencies of it, and they exist. Okay. So we will make better autopilots. We'll make better L2 systems, and lots of them. So that's for most people, that's what they need. So again, let's not talk about the term. On a technical point of view, it's L2, and then some people say L2 plus, 2.9, be creative. But the 2.9 already shows that you want to get as close to level 3. So it feels like an L3 system, but technically there's always the driver, the human there as a fallback.
Yeah.
And 10 years from now, I guess that we'll take that for granted. The cars will drive themselves, but we will have to pay attention because in the end, we're responsible for what the vehicle does. But that will keep the vehicles, let me say, relatively affordable. On the other hand, we'll see more and more driverless vehicles.
Yeah.
L4 vehicles in SAE speak, but they won't be owned.
Yeah.
Most of them will be commercial vehicles, right? And then in between, and again, lots of philosophical discussions about the value or not of L3. But the more people get exposed to these good level 2 systems, they will initially love them, and they will say, yeah, but I really want to read my newspaper. I don't think outside of England nobody reads newspapers anymore, right? But I will.
I read it on my phone.
Check my phone messages or whatever.
Never thought of that.
And therefore there will be a pull to say, yeah, but in limited or in defined conditions, the vehicle will take over the driving task. The responsibility will pass to the vehicle and the manufacturer. And then if it's technically an L3 and L4 in a limited ODD. 10 years from now, I think that's where we will see that really becoming relevant.
10 years from now, maybe like to level 3?
No, you can buy L3, right? I mean, still very, very limited.
Yeah, but being common kind of just everywhere.
And then, what Mercedes, as the ones who have done that, by the way, they're using our nice laser scanner to make it happen as a key enabler. That's the topic for another discussion. LiDAR and okay, but therefore, yes, you can now buy the first L3 systems. They're very few, and the use cases are very narrow. But still, people I'm sure, are going to love them.
Yeah,
but they will say, "Give me more. Give me more use cases.
I want to read my newspaper."
But only by putting the cars out there, we'll get usage data. We'll be able to solve the kind of long tail problems, things that happen rarely. If you have a fleet of whatever a typical car manufacturer would have, whatever tens, hundreds, or whatever of vehicles, the closer you get to production. But still, there are hundreds. Once you sell, there will be thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. So it gives you an idea of the importance and the wealth of data or usage profiles that you can get from a fleet.
Yeah.
And therefore, the relatively small number of L3 systems that we'll see now in the next few years is necessary to turn kind of the corner and get to a large volume application. But in the end, again, look at the SAE taxonomy. The difference between L3 and L4 isn't that great, right? It's more like how do you get the driver back in the loop? But from a technical point of view, I would say for the end user, it will feel kind of the same. But if you are in commercial vehicles, L3 doesn't help you because it can be really driverless. But of course, you can have L4 functions in your own vehicles that you have bought if you're wealthy enough.
There's that part.
And that won't change. That won't change 10 years from now.
Yeah.
But what will change is that we'll see all of the different let's say levels, but the majority will still be on L2 for privately operated vehicles, and we'll see many use cases 10 years from now where vehicles will be driverless, but they will be not owned by private people. They will be owned by taxi companies, fleet haulage companies for trucks. I don't know what. And they will be totally boring.
Yeah, which is good.
They will just do their job.
Yeah, which is great. Well, I mean, we still have a million topics that I'd like to get to. You definitely have to come back on the show. We can talk more about some of these automated driving systems. I definitely want to talk about the geopolitics of all of this as well.
About Valeo?
Yes.
We didn't talk about your company that much. Also be very interesting, of course.
Yeah. We got 9 minutes maybe-ish. I don't know if there's anything you want to discuss.
Well, if I have a chance to briefly introduce where I'm coming from, what we are doing, that would be really great. To
awesome.
maybe put a bit of context as well on the discussion. And let's start with the intro. You mentioned that I'm working for confident driving assistance systems at Valeo, which is quite a mouthful, right?
A little bit. Rolls off the tongue.
On the other hand, it's the most exciting stuff that we're doing, because it's the automated and connected vehicle, user experience, and digital services. So we're active in those 4 areas. In terms of automation, as I said, there's a big focus volume-wise, on privately owned operated vehicles, and therefore let's call it ADAS, driving assistance systems, where we have a full portfolio in terms of ultrasonic sensors, radars, lidars, very important, but also we have a huge camera business. And again, if we take Tesla and their claims, it might be a bit ambitious, but everything around us, the road environment, is designed for us humans, and we drive a lot with our eyes. Yeah. Right. So in terms of automation, cameras and image processing are playing a key role. And in that case, we provide the sensors, but we also provide all of the perception. So computer vision, but also radar perception, lidar perception, ultrasonic perception, and so on. We build an environmental model. You were talking about digital twins, modeling everything inside the vehicle. We do the same outside the vehicle, right? Okay. And then we have all of the planning, decision making, and control of the vehicle. And we do that for, I would say, the typical ADAS systems, level 2 and the like. We have test tracks and reference sensors, etc., to also validate these systems on the road or on the track, to have a data pipeline that then allows us to train our AI models, because meanwhile most of these things are based on artificial intelligence, and there as well, connectivity plays a key role. Transmitting data from vehicles into vehicles. So all of that kind of has a purpose and an importance on the automation ADAS side. Yeah. But equally, obviously, on the interior, which I think is where most of your activities are. So we manage data hubs or connectivity hubs in vehicles, where you have your cellular connectivity. But also, V2X or then inside the vehicle, Bluetooth, or whatever you want to have. So a lot of wireless technology, which then would enable cybersecurity over the air. Some of the points we've discussed, right? And then streaming data into the vehicle for the user experience, which is the third point I was mentioning. So we again make a lot of physical components. Be they screens, interactive surfaces, tactile, whatever they might be, including still some very, let's say, physical, precision mechatronic parts that exist, and last but not least, as I was mentioning, digital services. Yeah. So out of the connectivity path, and bringing together the interior cocoon and the exterior cocoon. We offer fleet services. We have as well announced a partnership with BMW recently on level 4 automated parking, driverless parking. And in that sense, these services to understand how people are parking their cars, where. How often, and what happens there, and what does the system have to deal with, is going to become an integral part of the product development.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that you were offering these kind of services also. So that's interesting. Is that only related to, if you have these prepared parking houses, or would that go for regular streets also, like in any condition?
The NE always is always making it especially hard.
Let's say standard.
But technically, and I was using these SAE levels. I assume everybody has heard about that. But there's also for AVP valid parking. There's also kind of standardization coming from the ISO. And simply speaking, there is one type 1. Where you say it's the vehicle managing everything, it's no infrastructure, and then there's the type 2, the vehicle is the infrastructure is managing everything. The vehicle is basically remote controlled. And I think that's what you're referring to. Say
like
the garage
with a parking garage next to the Mercedes.
Quite famous. Now, even from the way I was just introducing the topic, you can probably guess that I'm not a fan of extremes. And I believe the future will be there in the middle, with of course the vehicles becoming smarter and smarter, more and more standardization of hardware. I was talking about that, right? So the sensors are going to be there in many cases, but these sensors, to make the vehicles affordable, will have limitations. And then the infrastructure can pick up on these limitations by having a camera or whatever sensor here or there. So it's a cooperative system. So long story short, that's what we're working on. But the objective is to have minimal, if not maybe even zero infrastructures in some use cases, and then to serve these use cases with a very low hurdle, right, with an existing sensor set, and then to build a platform that can be configured in different ways, so that in the end, again, the user shouldn't care. Right, the function is there, but we find something which is affordable, both in terms of what the physical devices are there that are either on the car or in the infrastructure, and the cloud or the data is actually then what allows us to tailor the system or to release, to offer certain services in certain places for some people, while in other places, for other people, it might not yet be available until we have generated more data. But that's this journey where you keep the hardware stable, and then you can have pretty fast loops on a software side, and you iterate yourself to have more and more coverage.
Very interesting. Interesting. Automated parking we would be super interested in, because we have 2 crashes on tape. As you know, we spend a lot of time in cars and we record everything. We once crashed a Tesla while parking, and another one was a Jaguar. So there was, it wasn't that bad, but while parking, something went wrong. But while using the automated parking, and
it's if you talk to people, they say, "Hey, I know how to park," and we all probably would claim the same thing. And nevertheless, you ask an insurer, that's still the largest item in terms of money spent. Because here or there you scratch something, and it's always getting more and more expensive, in fact, to repair the damages. But therefore, I guess, when talking about 10 years' time, your question earlier, every car, quote unquote, will have a kind of, let me say, be uncrashable. Will have the necessary protection. And once again, 100% is always a big deal, but we're already a long way there.
It goes to that plane metaphor where it's just so many different redundancies that are already built into a plane. People, I think, I know a lot of people that are still afraid to fly, and then you kind of show them the facts of, hey, planes aren't crashing every day. most people kind of just get into them, go to their place because they know that they've got these built-in systems over time that are there. And I think vehicles, definitely.
I just, if I may, one more thing, because you mentioned you crashed a Tesla during parking. Now, I'm on one hand, I really acknowledge and appreciate what they have been doing. But now recently, you heard probably they removed sensors from the car, the radars, now the ultrasonic sensors.
Yeah.
And coming back to your example of the plane, if you knew that whatever plane manufacturer would remove safety,
I feel like good. Yeah.
It might give you some doubts. So in that case, I don't think Tesla is a very good example. Because with what they've done now, simply geometrically, you can show what areas around the vehicle simply have zero coverage in terms of sensors, and that makes them rather untypical of what I was just saying. As I said, that all OEMs are going that way to have a safety cocoon, a near-range safety cocoon around the car, which goes down to a few centimeters, which you need for parking. Except Tesla.
Tesla.
In both cases, the reason for the crash was that the colleagues overestimated the ability of the systems. So that was actually, they were relying on the car to stop, but it didn't. So that was they came from probably another car that stopped by itself, and so that's where the mistake came from. And we even, in one case, we have the discussion on tape, like, will it stop? Yeah, we'll stop. You don't have to hit the brake. And there comes the sound.
It'll stop.
It was not true.
It stopped, right?
Yeah, it did.
It just went back. It did stop.
Well, so actually, they were right. Yeah.
Yes, it'll always stop eventually. Well, this has been a great conversation. We didn't even really get into artificial intelligence, which tells you that we've definitely had
Next time.
When you get into a conversation like about tech and don't talk about AI, then that means you've had a very good conversation, I feel.
Yeah.
Joachim Mathes, sorry, I told you I'm going to get this right. You are the CTO of Valeo Comfort and Driving Assistance. Thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having
me.
me.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
My pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
For everybody else, please go to screensauto.com, check that out, and look for this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, all of those fun things. And also look for us on YouTube. Till next time, thank you.